with Susan Pease Bannett, and this is part 2 of our series focused on COVID and trauma. And the first series, we talked about basically the outline. We outlined a little bit about COVID and trauma, how it's kind of growing right now as we see it. So, Susan, hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we talked about managing stress last time, but we want to talk about now how to manage stress.
Well, this is how
not only just having pets to manage your stress.
Yeah, the pets manage their stress by clawing on
and
furniture.
adding slightly stress.
Unfortunately, clawing furniture doesn't do it for me, but but yeah, this is an important question because the risk of outlining the problem is that then people feel overwhelmed by the problem. And it is overwhelming. There's no way of getting around how overwhelming this time is. I've been impressed with how rapidly some of the messaging that I put out in Trauma Toolkit in 2012, how rapidly that messaging has been spread by lots of people about the things you can do to downregulate, we call it, or soothe your own nervous system through breath work and yoga and exercise and all of those good things that I'm not going to go into now because I think that knowledge is out there for people to look at and to watch videos on. I have a whole book written about it. The Trauma Toolkit is all about how do I move the needle. We talked last time about the needle that should be in the green, but right now it feels like it's in the yellow for a lot of people, that jumps into the red rather than the green jumping into the yellow. So we want to try to always move our anxiety basement needle lower so that we're starting in a place where a relatively calm place in our system. You know, I recently had an experience with this. I just loaded a new app called Welltory, Welltory, and it will kind of miraculously give you a snapshot of where your stress is through your Apple Watch and through putting your finger over the camera. And it's great because what it made me realize was that I was so habituated, so another word for saying used to, I was so used to the high levels of stress I was under that I was no longer registering myself as being in high stress. And then I'd look at the readout and go like, oh wow, like I didn't know I was there. Because what happens is we're very adaptable. This is why the human race has predominated on this planet, is because of our extreme adaptability. But that can also work against us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about knowing where your stress is and managing it. And we need to manage it. It's great to have down regulation strategies like breathing exercises and those kinds of things. Eating foods that are calming and soothing to our nervous system, being with people. But a lot of it also has to do with awareness, just awareness, and tapping into deeper parts of your being that are always there for you, that are always peaceful, that get covered up by the noise of anxiety. A lot of people don't know that in their being is this peacefulness. They think it's something they have to go out and find or create. And you don't, because the mind will naturally cycle through states of peacefulness. If you watch a normal baby, not a baby that's got a medical issue or something, but a normal baby will cycle through all the different brain states. And one of those states is called calm alert. And that is when the baby's just happy and playing and smiling and giggling and doing baby stuff. And people love being around babies in that state because it makes us feel good. Our mirror neurons go into a calm, happy, alert state with the baby, and that's why people like babies. Conversely, babies can be really dysregulated and upset, and then then it's harder to be around the baby. But the point is that we have that peacefulness as part of our makeup, our biology. If you're a spiritual person, you might say that it's part of who you are at a deep core level of your being. And it's always available to us. And this is the teaching throughout many, many cultures. So one of the things I wanted to talk about in terms of tapping back into that piece when we're getting upset and dysregulated is giving ourselves a lot of grace right now. Giving ourselves and each other a lot of grace and not expecting so much out of ourselves. I don't know how we can expect ourselves to function at pre-COVID levels of functioning when we are all under so much stress. You know, it's like if I had my way in social policy, everybody would get like a 30% work week cutback with same pay. Like, we're just not capable. Our nervous systems are straining really hard. It's like driving your car up a super steep mountain. Like, it can only do what it can do. And if you try to floor it too much, you're going to end up getting, as I did one year, towed off the mountain by a guy from Brooklyn who's maybe living in the witness protection program in Colorado. I don't know, like what, right? You know, it was an adventure, but I pushed it too hard. I pushed the car too hard. I wasn't paying attention, and it didn't ease off when I should have. I didn't pull over and stop when I should have. So that's kind of where we are with our bodies and our minds, is that we are pushing ourselves right now to keep achieving, to keep producing, to keep. And I feel like we need to accept, really deeply accept what's happening. My daughter's boyfriend recently got COVID, and his employer fully expected him to be back on the job within 3 or 4 days. This creates a lot of stress for people. This is harmful, right? He did not give this young man the grace he needed to fully get well and feel physically able to return to work. And he added extra stress to him by making him feel that his job was threatened.
I have a friend whose boss got COVID last week, and he's still working.
Yes.
In the business.
Yes, this is piling stress upon stress. This is not taking care of ourselves and the people around us. So, you know, really, I think we need to adjust our expectations of what's doable and possible, and the same rules do not apply as applied 3 years ago. They just don't. When we got a cold 3 years ago, it was like, get over it, get over yourself, get back to work as soon as you can.
With a cold.
With no mask. You know, cough on everybody, it's fine. Now, like, the rules are super different, and because COVID is it is not a cold and it is not a flu. It is a profoundly hard thing to recover from, and I have friends who are long haulers, and they are still suffering quite a bit. Some people are comparing it to AIDS in the sense of really needing to manage it sort of over the long term, if you're one of those people. So this is a profoundly different kind of illness and virus than we are used to dealing with. And to accept the unknown about it, to be conservative and thoughtful about how we treat other people around us, but also to give ourselves permission to just not do as much, to not be as productive. Like, that's a huge American value, productivity. We can't. We are going to make ourselves sicker. We are going to make ourselves more mentally ill. If we do that, we're going to increase our own anxiety. So giving ourselves grace and forgiveness, and I really encourage everybody listening to this video to, you know, sit down and take a minute and really look at all your obligations and expectations, and then scale them all down by at least 20%. You know, just take them down by 20%.
Because when you're stressed, they feel like 120%.
Yes, and then people are committing suicide. I know somebody in our spiritual community who recently took his own life, and it's terribly sad because people are just maxed out. So that's one thing. The other thing is that there's a lot of anger. Have you noticed? There's a lot of anger going around. You know,
Yes.
When I live in Portland, Oregon, and people on the freeways are driving like Boston. And I can say that because I lived in Boston for 17 years and I was a Boston driver. So I know what that is, but that like very aggressive, very reactive, road ragey, I'm going to break the rules to make my, Like that is showing up in Portland, where traditionally the biggest argument in Portland was who was going to go first at the stop sign. You, right? But now it's feeling really different, and
now it's people come up to the stop sign and don't even stop, and they just go through.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the levels of aggression are really on the rise, and I think, as a therapist, that seems pretty obvious that aggression is related to frustration and a feeling of threat. Because when people are threatened, when any mammal is threatened, think about it. If you corner a raccoon at your garbage can, what's it gonna do? It's not gonna lick your hand and give you want to scritch. It's gonna...
Unless it's me.
Yes, Brooke is the animal whisperer, so it might actually approach Brooke for food or something. But for the rest of us, it's going to be threatened, and it's going to act like a threatened, aggressive mammal, right? So when mammals, are threatened, we get more aggressive. When we notice a behavior change in ourselves, you can ask yourself and kind of go inside and what's behind this? Is it, am I frustrated? Am I afraid? Am I sad? What's going on? And then look at that. This week we lost a very beloved teacher for a lot of people in the world. His name was Thich Nhat Hanh. He was a Vietnamese monk, and what's great about his work is that I don't think I've ever met another teacher who understood anger as well as he did. He had his village in Vietnam was bombed to the ground and burned to the ground by Americans 3 times. He built it. He helped rebuild it after the first bombing. They came and bombed it again. They rebuilt it again the second time. They bombed it again. So what did he do? He had friends who self-immolated. He had monk friends who set themselves on fire to protest the war. The level of anger and grief was so high. His answer was to work with his own anger and then come to America and work with veterans. That was his answer to his own anger, is he wanted to forgive people, he wanted to reconcile, he wanted to teach better ways of being. And he was also a friend of Martin Luther King's, famously. And he wrote this book that I've recommended to a number of my clients called Anger. The title of the book is Anger, Wisdom for Cooling the Flames. And he, because I feel like we don't really, even as therapists, I don't feel like we work really well with anger. It's a hard topic to approach. It's a hard topic to understand. But I love this analogy. He said, think of your anger as raw potatoes. And he's like, you put the raw potatoes in the pan, they're not very digestible. And they could make you sick if you eat them. He said, but if you light the fire of awareness under the pan and you put on the lid of containment, meaning you don't act out your anger, you don't speed past the guy on the road and then back into them so that they have to slow down. You don't act out those feelings. You contain those feelings. Fire of awareness, lid of containment, and then he said, pretty soon those potatoes are smelling good.
And they're edible.
And they're edible, right? They're digestible. That anger becomes digestible. And it becomes, what do potatoes become in our body when we eat them?
Fries?
Maybe in your body.
Food?
They become fuel.
Okay, fuel. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you were going.
They become
I
fries.
just think fries when you're frying potatoes.
They become fuel. So your anger, when it's properly digested and metabolized, leads you to what they call in Buddhism, right action. So it becomes, I call it rocket fuel. I take my anger and I use it to propel me into projects and actions in the world that are going to make the world better, which is exactly what he did. He took his anger, considerable, can't even imagine the level of anger that must have been going on after your village is burned to the ground 3 times by people that you don't even know. But to take that and transform it through awareness and containment, and then go out and engage with the world and make the world better, is, we're not all capable of that. He's really at an amazingly high level of evolvement. But I think we can all apply those principles. Some people, this is also a problem, is that we have such a weird relationship to anger in this country that a lot of people don't even know when they are angry. they don't even, because it feels so, I see this a lot with millennials, feels so unacceptable to be angry or to have any negative feeling that they just deny that they have it, and then it comes out sideways in some way. So it's like we are in one of the most stressful periods of humanity right now. Like right now, we're right in the middle of it. It's okay if you're feeling angry about it. It's okay if you're feeling frustrated with people and angry with people around you. But that doesn't, if you make the choice to act out, you yell at them, you scream at them, you tell them what crappy people they are, you make fun of them, none of that is helpful. And I love comedy. I love comedy so much. It's a great distraction, but I really don't think making fun of people has been really good for this country. It's just created a lot more division and anger. I think we need to understand that although we may be frustrated by different things, like some people are frustrated because other people aren't wearing masks, and other people are really frustrated because they're being forced to wear something they don't think is useful for their life. Can we see that as much as we may disagree about the answer, that we're both feeling really frustrated right now with each other? We're both feeling really angry with each other. And what do we do with that? If we can bring the awareness and the containment to that anger, we might be able to break through to some creative solutions. Often what I've noticed for myself, this is not unlike holding a yoga pose. When you hold that posture without acting out on it, sometimes it feels really tense and it's hard to do that. But then you sometimes get a breakthrough in consciousness that's like, oh, maybe we need to do this, right? It gives rise to creativity. And I would say that creativity, and certainly comedy, arises from tension and frustration and rage quite a bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of like singers that have been through a lot of things, and stage performers that have been through a lot, and
they channel that feeling into their art, which Freud called sublimation, right? And he considered that the more evolved way of being with a feeling was to sublimate it rather than to just willy-nilly act it out. We can act it out by pulling out guns and start shooting people, or we could sublimate it and create, like Picasso did, Guernica, this amazing painting about the Spanish Civil War, and one of the best pictures of trauma on canvas that I've ever seen, right? So let me just check. I know I wrote a couple other things down here. Yes, okay, so there was one more piece to this, which was about when we get threatened enough, we start to shut down our empathy towards other people. It's called empathic failure. And there's been studies on it that they took college students and then they measured kind of their levels of stress versus their desire to help, like a homeless person walking by them on campus. And they found that the human being, we can turn on or turn off our empathy based on our thoughts about that person. So if we think that person is worthy, a worthy person, then we're more likely to engage our empathy towards them. But if we think that person is unworthy, then we're more likely to shut off our empathy towards them, because it also reduces our stress to do that in a way, but it creates more stress around us. So let me give you an example in the medical community. Like there's a lot of anger. I have a daughter who's just going into nursing right now. She's just starting. A lot of nurses are really angry about how they're being talked to about their policies and about the fact that people are there because they refuse to follow medical recommendations. And they're angry about it and they're judgy about it sometimes. And that judgment, if it's communicated to the client, the patient, is not going to help the patient change their mind. I mean, I've never changed my mind because somebody was being judgy about me. Have you?
It's like me going to that dentist and they getting angry at me because I hadn't gone to the dentist a while. It's because whenever I go to the dentist, they always get angry at me.
Yeah. So, right.
So I had to find a dentist that didn't get angry at me.
Yes. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Yes, we have to look at what we feel like doing, and then we have to look at what actually is helpful, right? It's helpful. And conversely, if you don't believe in mask wearing and you're skeptical about whether you can trust the medical establishment, be really helpful if you can contain those feelings and leave room and empathy for the people who are trying to help you. You know, it goes both ways. So, you know, I have this slide that I show for therapists because I teach therapists about this a lot, because therapist's job is to let go of judgment and to engage our compassion and empathy. So I have this teeter-totter, like this seesaw, and it shows that, like, if you are in a lot of judgment, you just not going to be empathic. You're just not. They don't exist in the same space. It's like calmness and anxiety. Like, they don't really exist in the same space. So, like, really making a choice, like making a commitment to be aware of your feelings, be aware of your feelings, B, manage your feelings, and then C, committing yourself to a space of compassion and empathy rather than judgment. Doesn't mean those feelings aren't going to float through there. Like, we're all going to have them. We're going to see the people with a mask, or somebody's going to see Fauci on TV and they're going to have a reaction. But it's about, like, just because you have a thought or a reaction doesn't mean that it's correct or helpful. And really, like, managing it and reality checking it, and then just going back to, like, what does a good human being do in this situation, right? We don't scream at people. We don't cut them off in traffic. We don't completely throw the baby out with the bathwater. We take what's helpful and we kindly leave the rest. Do you know that expression?
No, and I don't want to know about it.
Okay, so I'm a lot older than Brooke, and I got some really old-fashioned expressions. Those of you over 50 will appreciate that phrase. But yes, but it basically means, yeah, you might want to throw some stuff away that you don't agree with, but don't throw it all away. Look for the point of agreement with you and somebody else. And this takes work and it takes maturity. Like, you have to want to be an actual mature adult to do this, and not be coming from a place of being a child inside, because your inner child's gonna be like, no, you know, I don't wanna, that person's stupid, right? What do my kids call, like, poopy head, you know, what the things they call people when they were 4 years old, right? We've got an inner 4-year-old that wants to judge and label people. The adult needs to be engaged to manage that, to have that awareness, and you're totally allowed your own feelings and opinion. But you're not really entitled to act that out. Not if you want a sane society, not if you want to create less suffering instead of more suffering in yourself and in the people around you.
Very good information. Thank you. As we wrap up this number 2 on the series.
Yeah, thanks, Brooke. Is there anything else that you want to ask or talk about that comes to mind?
Not right now.
You're good. That's enough to sit with for now?
Oh, yes.
Brooke is a very compassionate person. I appreciate her very much.
I'm okay.
Okay, so if you like what you see, if you find this helpful to you or maybe to people in your life, please like and subscribe and share so that other people can find information that might be helpful to their lives. Be well. I appreciate all of you. See you next time.